I have a daughter, Leah, who's 23. I met my current husband when she was 16, and she never really saw him as a dad, although he's always been there, which is part of who he is. He values family, and she respects him a lot. He has a son, Justin, who's 27, and there were some issues involving money my stepson inherited from his mother's side of the family. Leah was counting on the fact that Justin would share, but it didn't happen. This caused a huge fallout, especially when my husband got involved. Leah had claimed he didn't see her as family and went low contact. Then, 2 years later, things started to get better. She's getting married, and my husband suggested to contribute money towards her wedding as a way to make up for the inheritance money Justin refused to share with her. She agreed, but only sent me an invitation. When my husband saw that the invitation only had my name on it, we both discovered that Leah did not want him to attend. I felt absolutely devastated, but didn't say a word because it's her wedding. My husband fought with me regarding my stance, and I told him it's her wedding and I can't force her to invite him, even when he put money towards it. Is it okay? No, but it's out of my hands, and I'm just basically a guest. He didn't like that. He stormed off, then had Justin call to berate me, and call me and Leah opportunists, who took full advantage of his father. I was heartbroken over that. Am I the a-hole for what I said to him? Why on earth would your daughter expect her non-bio-related stepson to share his inheritance money from his mother? The entitlement is off the charts, as is the fact that you feel that is somehow a normal expectation. It's his money, his mother's money. Your daughter has literally nothing to do with that. It was outrageous she demanded a portion of his inheritance. Your husband didn't need to make up money that your daughter was never entitled to. The entire notion is ridiculous, and your daughter not inviting her stepfather over this is insane. You've raised a horrible daughter, and you're allowing her to act like an entitled brat. Doesn't seem like you care about her behavior, your husband, or your stepson at all. Justin is entirely right about both of you. You're the a-hole, and so is your kid. I'm trying to figure out why in the hell would your daughter think she would get some money from her stepbrother's inheritance from his mother. Then she gets money from your husband to pay for her wedding, but didn't include him on the invitation, and doesn't want him there. She never saw him as a father figure, but expected money from his son that he got from his mother. You're the a-hole, lady, especially your daughter. I'm with the son on this. You both are opportunists. You're the a-hole, and you've raised an a-hole daughter as well. Why the heck would your daughter think she's hard done by in any way, shape, or form for not getting a slice of her stepbrother's inheritance from the completely unconnected side? Entitled vultures, without even the decency of extending an invite to your unfortunate husband. My 25 female, sister-in-law, 25 female, has always had a thing for copying me. It was harmless at first, such as stuff like dressing the same as me, doing her nails exactly the same as me. I once bought myself a purse I've been wanting for a while, and she went and bought the exact same purse in the exact same color and everything. Little stuff like that, which honestly didn't really bother me because it's stuff I can't control anyway. For the past few years, I've been telling my whole family that I want to get a dog, and name it a specific name, which is not a common dog name at all, by the way. Sister-in-law caught wind of this, and what does she do? Her and my brother get a dog and name it this exact name. This is when I started thinking that this was weird. My fiancé agreed, but told me to just be the bigger person and leave it alone. I agreed. Last year, my fiancé proposed to me. We had a family dinner planned at my mom's where the whole family would be there, including sister-in-law and brother, where we announced our engagement. Sister-in-law didn't seem too ecstatic and just gave us a half-hearted congrats. 2 weeks later, we're all gathered at my mom's again for dinner when sister-in-law and brother announced to the family that they're engaged. Obviously, I'm happy for them and congratulate them, but the timing. Again, I just keep it moving. Time comes for me to send out my invites. Not even a week later, sister-in-law sends out hers, and lo and behold, the weddings are on the same day, same weekend. Everyone was confused about this and started calling her out. She acted like she didn't know they were on the same weekend. She ended up changing her date but made a huge fuss over it. Finally, the last straw was when we were having another family dinner last weekend, and my grandma pulled me aside in the kitchen and handed me a check to help pay for part of my wedding. I wasn't expecting this at all, and was obviously super grateful for this, and reluctant to accept it, but she insisted. She also gave sister-in-law and my brother a check, but I was unaware of how much it was for. Well, somehow, some way, my sister-in-law once again caught wind of how much I got, and called my grandma with my brother, freaking out about how it's unfair she gave me and my fiancé so much money compared to what she gave them, and that things should be fair. My grandma was super pissed off and offended, and ended up canceling their check because it's her money, and I'm her only granddaughter, and visit her the most, so yeah, she's giving me more. Well, my sister-in-law is claiming it's my fault, and bad-mouthing me to anyone who will listen, saying I'm a spoiled bee and a huge a-hole. My brother's been joining in on this too. I kind of feel like an a-hole because I know financially they could use the money. But my grandma has a bad taste in her mouth due to the whole dates thing and just doesn't really like her. So, I don't know. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. It's your grandma's money, and she can do whatever she likes with it. Sister-in-law should be happy with what she got. Well, looks like she gets nothing now. To give some background, my sister and I didn't really grow up together. My aunt couldn't have kids, so my aunt adopted my sister from my parents when she was born. This is a decision that has always been tough on my mom, but at the time, 7 years before I was born, my father's business went bankrupt, long story, and they thought this was the best decision. Nevertheless, eventually the situation changed drastically, and my father became very wealthy while my aunt struggled financially. With that in mind, my sister shows up to my house one day and says she's moving in. She is 20 at this point. My parents gladly accepted this, and I was complacent. Eventually, however, I started to see the real reason she was there. She clearly was struggling financially, and my aunt could no longer support her financial habits. My sister had just come from a cruise to Portugal. After she started living with us, she started to just use my parents for their money. From a new car to a new apartment to so much more. They were just happy to have her back, and it wasn't my money, so I said nothing. Then she slowly started edging me out of the family, and since I was in college on the West Coast, I couldn't really stop it. My parents are still amazing people, and they still cared for me, but I could tell she wanted me gone, and she went to great lengths to try to make that happen. She failed because my parents are amazing. Eventually, I grew up, I became a physician and started my own family, so I moved on. My parents retired and moved back to India to live out their life among our family. Unable to use them for their house and money, she shows up to my house with her husband and her bags, asking to move in. She cried to me about how she lost her job, couldn't afford her rent, and that she had so much debt. She didn't. My father had quite literally paid it all off. She eventually calls my parents, and they try to convince me to let her stay. I say no, and my mother starts pleading to treat her kindly as her brother. She says how it's not her fault, and being the angel my mother is, she continued to blame herself for having given my sister away, which she believed led to what she became. I caved and eventually gave her some money to rent for a few months, until she found a job. I even called a few friends to get her some interviews, which she never went to. 3 months passed, and needing more rent she showed up to my house again, and having had enough, I said no. I kicked her out of my house, and my parents have been pleading for me to help my sister ever since. Just for some extra information, my parents are no longer in the position to financially support themselves, and I, happily, provide for them some money to pay their monthly bills in their house. It is the least I could do. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Your sister and her husband are adults. They should both be working. They need to figure it out for themselves. Continue to support your parents, but don't give your sister a dime. She ruined your aunt's finances, moved on to your parents, and is now trying to get you to support her. Not the a-hole. Your sister needs to grow up. She has an entitled sense of self, and it's not your responsibility, or your parents, to bail her out. This. OP, I would tell your sister to never show up at your door again. Make it clear to her that you will never give her a penny. You already bailed her out, and you're done. If she shows up at your door, don't answer. If she asks you for money, literally don't give her a penny. She'll just keep coming back because, apparently, she and her partner don't want to work. They just want to be bailed out. Haha. My stepbrother got married a few weeks ago. Mom delivered a very long and heartfelt speech about how glad she was to be in his life, how she was so glad life worked out the way it had, and that she wouldn't change the events of her life because they were worth it to get to these moments of perfection, and how we as a family were all so grateful and glad our lives had turned out as they had. She was crying, her husband was crying, and stepbrother and his wife were crying. But my brother, sister, and I felt her words like a slap in the face. To get this perfect family, we had to lose our dad suddenly, and it also meant being torn away from the place we felt most at home, because Mom couldn't stand being there, and it took us away from family and friends. To hear her say she was glad everything happened, glad Dad died, my siblings and I could not shake that. Mom was glowing and gushing the whole rest of the wedding, and the next day she was upset that we didn't go hang out with her and her husband. She asked us what happened, and why we'd acted like we were caught between crying and getting mad most of the wedding. My brother told her that her little speech was dubbed, and how she was so glad Dad was dead, maybe we didn't want to spend any time with her. She was all flustered, and tried to say we were overreacting and taking it the worst way, instead of the best way, which is how she meant it. What followed was a couple of weeks of no talking. Then she found out the three of us were talking to each other about it, and she got mad at us, and said we had no right to try and make her feel guilty for her speech. I told her that she should not have spoken for us as a family, and did she really think we agreed that the family was perfect? Did she really believe for 3 children who lost their dad, their only dad, would say they wouldn't change a thing? She told me we don't only have one father, that we have 2, and we're blessed with a bigger family out of the loss. I told her it didn't take away from the fact that we would change that in a heartbeat, and we would keep our dad regardless of whether her husband and his son came into our lives or not. I told her she had to see how it would hurt us to hear those words. I brought up that nobody else made a speech like it, and how we had to try and act okay through it all to not cause a scene while we had our hearts ripped out. She said yet again how we saw the worst in it, and how she was speaking for herself. I told her no, she spoke about the whole family feeling that way, and she had no right to do that. She told me I had no right to speak to her the way I was, and that I was just trying to make her words bad instead of good. She told the three of us that we were being spiteful, and taking our grief about Dad out on her, and she wasn't going to tolerate it. Her husband and our stepbrother learned about the argument, and they're annoyed at us for being upset also. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. I would have voted differently had she not doubled down. Her original speech wasn't great, but I could understand that she might have been thoughtless but good-intentioned. For her to treat your father's death as this blessing, and to make it sound like it was a sentiment you all shared, is really effed up. Absolutely not the a-hole. Your mother, unfortunately, shows a remarkable lack of empathy toward you and your siblings. It sounds like she might be a narcissist, focusing only on her feelings. She appears completely blind to the hurt and loss you've suffered from losing your dad. I hope she manages to see your point of view someday, but with her husband and stepson enabling her and taking her side, it seems unlikely. OP, you are correct. Your mother felt it was appropriate to speak for you, and you don't agree, and you most certainly don't need to agree. She owes you an apology, which she is too clueless and most likely too selfish to give you all. Enjoy your relationship with your siblings. Keep your mom at arm's length. Maybe try and spend time with your dad's extended family during the holidays, so you can actually grieve and remember him with people that still care about him along with your siblings. Not the a-hole. X and I have been divorced for 8 years. His son is 8. X and I share 2 children together. Our son is 16, and our daughter is 14. X cheated and got the other woman pregnant while we were married. When I found out, I ended our marriage. He fought for our marriage until he realized nothing was going to change, and then he entered a real relationship with other women. I always kept things distant between us. I didn't meet or interact with his son or the other woman until 3 years after the divorce, and even then, it was at a play for our son, and we hardly interacted. A year later, the other woman died. X has been single since and raising his son. On more than one occasion, he has asked me for help, and I've always said no. He wanted me to be a maternal figure for his son, and to take him sometimes while our kids were with me. He even tried to get my family to include his son as part of our family overall. Then, a couple months ago, X was in an accident, and his son was placed in temporary foster care while he was recovering. He had asked me to take his son, and I said no. He got back on his feet only recently, and his son is back with him. He has now turned on me, and tried to turn our kids on me. They told me he's always annoying them about it when they're with him for his parenting time. X has been telling everyone and anyone that I'm treating his son like trash, letting him go into foster care, etc. A couple of my friends are aware and think my stance was too harsh and that I am in the wrong for not helping, since he is my children's little brother. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. This isn't on you. Just because you're a woman and mother doesn't mean other people's children are your responsibility. If it was a stepchild, I'd think you were an a-hole, but this is a child you don't really know and don't have an existing relationship with. Your ex is an a-hole for trying to foist his love child on you. It's one thing to ask, and another to bad-talk you for setting a boundary. Some people are so entitled. Not the a-hole. He even tried to get my family to include his son as part of our family overall. He doesn't happen to mean the family he left for the other woman, right? He made his choice, and has no right to expect anything but resentment from you when his little plan goes wrong. You can be proud of your kids for seeing through his manipulation attempt. Not the a-hole. Your ex made his bed, and now he can lie in it. However, you should document the harassment and all the manipulation tactics he's using to turn your kids against you. Keep an eye on your kids. You should ensure their safety first.